Hello, I'm Jackie Fox, and welcome to Fox Talks. This week we're talking about the Mueller report, and I think this is the most important video of the series. So if you only watch one, watch this one, because more so than a lot of the other things that I've mentioned during this actively affects us and has for a long time. So today, we're going to be talking about Russian trolls. We're going to be talking about what was conclusively uncovered by the Mueller report. And we're also going to talk about sources outside of the Mueller report that show us that this had a much broader impact and consists of a much broader campaign than just interfering in the election. Like, if you think that you're somehow apolitical or that maybe the election wasn't that big of a deal. Maybe you hate both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. You don't care which way it went and who the Russians backed. It doesn't matter. They're both garbage. Okay, but it's not just about the election. Now, I have a really long script written for this one, so bear with me, and I'm going to try to get to you everything that I understand about the Russian trolling effort in as dense a way as possible, but there's a lot, so just bear with me. So first off, the Russian government used state-owned media outlets, including website and radio broadcaster Sputnik and television news network Russia Today, to disadvantage Clinton in the presidential campaign. Russia Today's portrayal of Clinton during the run-up to the election was found. A U.S. intelligence report found that it was consistently negative and focused on her leaked emails, accused her of corruption, poor physical and mental health, and ties to Islamic extremism. Both Sputnik and RT produce media in several languages, including English, for international audiences. So even if you think that somehow you managed to avoid this by sticking purely to media companies instead of social media, you could have fallen victim to this as well, because part of the campaign was using those official sources. But a lot of it was done with the IRA. So the IRA is going to be the topic of most of this video. Most of it. There is a little bit more to come with Russia Today and Sputnik, but we'll get to that in a second. The IRA later used social media accounts and interest groups to sow discord in the U.S. political system, using what it termed information warfare. The campaign evolved from a generalized program designed in 2014 and 2015 to undermine the U.S. electoral system in general, to a targeted operation that by early 2016 favored candidate Trump and disparaged candidate Clinton. The IRA's operations also included the purchase of political advertisements on social media in the names of U.S. persons and entities, as well as the staging of political rallies inside of the United States. To organize those rallies, IRA employees posed as U.S. grassroots entities and persons and made contact with Trump supporters and the Trump campaign officials in the United States. So let's get a little bit deeper into all of that and start looking at some of the more specific things that they have been doing and continue to do to this day. In early 2015, the IRA began to create larger social media groups or public social media pages that claimed, falsely, to be affiliated with U.S. political and grassroots organizations. In certain cases, the IRA created accounts that mimicked real U.S. organizations. For example, one IRA-controlled Twitter account, @10GOP, purported to be connected to the Tennessee Republican Party. More commonly, the IRA created accounts in the names of fictitious U.S. organizations and grassroots groups, and used those accounts to pose as anti-immigration groups, Tea Party activists, Black Lives Matter protesters, and other U.S. social and political activists. Collectively, the IRA's social media accounts reached tens of millions of U.S. persons. Individual IRA social media accounts attracted hundreds of thousands of followers. For example, at the time they were deactivated by Facebook in mid-2017, the IRA's United Muslims of America Facebook group had 300,000 followers. The Don't Shoot Us Facebook group had 250,000 followers. The Being Patriotic Facebook group had over 200,000 followers, and the Secured Borders Facebook group had over 130,000 followers. According to Facebook, in total, the IRA-controlled accounts made over 80,000 posts before their deactivation in August of 2017. These posts reached at least 29 million US persons, may have reached an estimated of 126 million people. Twitter also announced that it had notified approximately 1.4 million people who Twitter believed may have been in contact with an IRA-controlled account. Numerous high-profile U.S. persons, including former Ambassador Michael McFaul, Roger Stone, Sean Hannity, Michael Flynn Jr., retweeted or responded to tweets posed to these IRA-controlled accounts. Multiple individuals associated with the Trump campaign also promoted IRA tweets. Meanwhile, U.S. authorities say Russian agents hacked into computer systems associated with both U.S. political parties. They are believed to have stolen thousands of emails from leading Democratic Party figures in early 2016 and leaked them online weeks ahead of the party's national convention. Russian military intelligence used the Guccifer 2.0 persona DCLeaks.com and WikiLeaks to release U.S. victim data obtained in cyber operations publicly, the U.S. intelligence agencies said in their January 2017 report. The U.S. Justice Department announced that Russia and the world's most interesting catering company, by the way, IRA uses being a catering company as a front, which is just a really interesting choice for me. They continue to attack the United States online. And Russian trolls have even defended the efforts of Special Counsel Robert Mueller earlier this year. See? Playing both sides of this. Speaking of a woman facing charges as an IRA troll in Operation Lotkey, which is the one that involved the election, this case serves as a stark reminder to all Americans. Our foreign adversaries continue their efforts to interfere in our democracy by creating social and political division, spreading distrust in our political system, and advocating for the support or defeat of particular political candidates, says FBI Director Christopher Wray. The volume of Russian activity isn't the same as it was in 2016, but the approach is the same, which is identify and infiltrate audiences on both the left and the right, and then try to pit them against each other across race, socioeconomic status, religion, and social issues, says Chris Watts, Distinguished Fellow at the Foreign Policy Research Institute. An indictment also gave new insights into how Russia frames stories for maximum impact. Operatives were instructed not to post stories from right-wing news sites like Breitbart to liberal pages, for instance. They were to avoid linking to New York Times from conservative accounts. They also received specific direction on how to frame certain stories and issues. For example, and this is a direct quote, "Brand McCain is an old geezer who has lost it and who long ago belonged in a home for the elderly. Emphasized that John McCain's pathological hatred towards Donald Trump and towards all his initiatives crosses all reasonable borders and limits," said one director. And of Paul Ryan, similarly, was to be branded as a complete and total nobody. So that's an idea of how they get into political and partisan politics. But let's take this whole thing a little bit wider and look past the election. What other political issues have Russian trolls and the Russian media been getting themselves into in order to drive a wedge into America and places around the world? A media analysis by blogger Conspirator Norteno of trending hashtags related to various exit movements, including Britain's Leave campaign and others, reveals that RT and Sputnik rank among the most prolific tweeters, even though none of the movements in question concern Russia directly. And I'm going to link to the Twitter pic that shows his data, and it puts Russia Today on top by far, although kind of a surprising semi-close second is Breitbart. And then after a significant decrease, we have The Independent, and then after another significant decrease, we have Sputnik, the other Russian agency. And this is across things like Calexit, which is a movement to get California to separate from the rest of the United States. Brexit, a movement to get Britain to separate itself from the European Union. Frexit, I'm not really sure what that is. Grexit? Texit? Texexit? And Italexit. These are all the ones that it was looking at. So, I'm assuming that this is, what, like France, Greece, Italy, Texas, Britain, California. They're trying to break up all of these, some of the most significant parts of a lot of these countries to sow division, because it creates a world in which Russian influence can more greatly influence us. There's also some media analysis that I'm also going to link to. This came from BuzzFeed news analysis. It shows that Russian trolls basically swarmed the Charlottesville march online, blaming the violence on Antifa and backing Trump all the way. And then a lot of them went completely silent, presumably after a Twitter ban. So there's an interesting graph as a part of this particular bit of research that shows that in the 2 weeks leading up to the Charlottesville event, right-wing Russian trolls, the ones that were specifically going after the right wing, show a significant trend upwards in talking about Charlottesville specifically. They were building up hype for this event. They were trying to get people to come out. They were trying to get the most radical people they could to come out because they wanted to make it a hellscape to a certain degree. But the biggest spike in their talking about Charlottesville actually comes in the week afterwards. And that's again to shift discussion away from the whole neo-Nazi thing, and then to try to defend Trump's accusations of things, of there being good people on both sides, but also to demonize Antifa for fighting Nazis, which is just something that I couldn't understand why people were doing this, but I guess if there's a massive concerted effort to brainwash people into thinking that fighting Nazis is somehow bad, then I guess it makes more sense. Which is not saying that I promote, like, physical violence, but come on. Counter-protesting Nazis, that should be like America 101. Guys. The IRA organized and promoted political rallies inside the U.S. while posing as U.S. grassroots activists. First, the IRA used one of its pre-existing social media personas to announce and promote the event. Then the IRA sent out a large number of direct messages to followers of its social media account, asking them directly to attend the event. From those who responded with interest in attending, the IRA sought a U.S. person to serve as the event's coordinator. In most cases, the IRA account operator would tell the U.S. person that they could not personally attend the event due to some pre-existing conflict, or because they were somewhere else in the United States. The IRA then further promoted the event by contacting U.S. media about the event and directing them to speak with this coordinator that they had assigned. After the event, the IRA posted videos and photographs of the events to the IRA's social media accounts. So as you can see, in organizing these rallies, they're both building up in every way they can the rally, and then trying to capitalize on that moment, that event, on actual US space by actual US people that they were able to convince to, do their will, to try to get the very most out of the whole thing. The Mueller office identified dozens of US rallies organized by the IRA. The early evidence of a rally was a Confederate rally in November of 2015. From June 2016 until the end of the presidential campaign, almost all of the US rallies organized by the IRA focused on the election, often promoting the Trump campaign and or opposing the Hillary campaign. Pro-Trump rallies included 3 in New York, a series of pro-Trump rallies in Florida in August 2016, a series of pro-Trump rallies in October 2016 in Pennsylvania. The Florida rallies drew the attention of the Trump campaign, which posted about the Miami rally on Trump's Facebook account. They also, working on the other side and with kind of a broader series of rallies, they recruited black activists while posing as a grassroots group called Black Matters US. In February of 2017, the persona Black Fist, purporting to want to teach African Americans to protect themselves when contacted by law enforcement, hired a self-defense instructor in New York to offer classes sponsored by Black Fist. The IRA also recruited moderators of conservative social media groups to promote IRA-generated content, as well as recruited individuals to perform certain political acts, such as walking around New York City dressed up as Santa Claus with a Trump mask. Look, that is a direct quote from the Mueller report. I don't know how much more weird this can possibly get, but let's keep going. One of the things about the Mueller report is that Mueller didn't conclude that there was any intentional conspiracy between the Trump campaign or any US person and Russia. However, in addition to all the people that were unwittingly sharing their memes, including TV personalities who also promoted their misinformation, like Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson, using their kind of impunity as opinion pundits or opinion journalists to not have to represent the truth, there were actually Trump campaign members that kind of worked with some of these Russian groups and were contacted by them. However, there is no evidence to suggest that they thought that they were any other than U.S. citizens. Basically, they believed that a U.S. person was trying to organize a rally for them, so they were like, yeah, let me give you some resources, go ahead. Which is understandable. Like, I'm not accusing them of anything here, but I find it interesting that it happened. Specifically, the Mueller report says about this incident, starting in June 2016, the IRA contacted different U.S. persons affiliated with the Trump campaign in an effort to coordinate pro-Trump IRA organized rallies inside the United States. In all cases, the IRA contacted the campaign while claiming to be a U.S. political activist working on behalf of a conservative grassroots organization. The IRA's contacts included requests for signs and other material to use as rallies, as well as requests to promote the rallies and help coordinate logistics. While certain campaign volunteers agreed to provide the requested support, for example, agreeing to set aside a certain number of signs, the investigation has not identified evidence that any Trump campaign official understood that the requests were coming from foreign nationals. So that's what the Mueller report says about this. Now, once again, let's go a little bit wider and try to find other protests that weren't necessarily related to directly to electoral politics, just to, again, bring home the fact that the campaign into influencing the 2016 election, the campaign into influencing the 2018 midterm elections, which is also a thing, and the coming campaign to influence the 2020 election, which is already underway, are all kind of an offshoot of a larger mission, which is simply to drive a wedge into American politics in as many places as possible. An example of this is in May 2016, there was a protest outside of the Islamic Center in downtown Houston. A group that called itself the Heart of Texas had organized it on social media. A protest, they said, against the Islamization of Texas. On one side of the Travis Street protest, there were about 10 protesters. On the other side, there were around 50 counter-protesters with a group called Save Islamic Knowledge. Both were Russian troll groups that had mobilized real-life U.S. citizens and convinced them essentially to stand on opposite sides of the streets, yelling at each other. What neither side could have known was that the Russian trolls were encouraging both sides to battle in the streets and create division among real Americans. Richard Burr said on Wednesday, during an open hearing with the general counsels of Facebook, Google, and Twitter. One person who attended stated, "The Heart of Texas promoted this event, but we didn't see one of them." Burr said, "Now we know why. It's hard to attend an event in Houston, Texas when you're trolling from a site in St. Petersburg, Russia." The pro-Islamist rally was not the only event the Heart of Texas page promoted before the election. The group advertised a Texas statewide rally in October and a series of anti-immigrant, anti-Hillary rallies across the states 3 days before the election. Now that we've covered all of this, now that we've covered them trying to drive wedges based on electoral politics, based on race, based on immigration status, based on all of these movements for countries to divide themselves and break up. After we've covered all of that, I want you to understand that this is still going on. That due to some concentrated efforts on the part of Facebook and on the part of Twitter, we're getting tools that are shutting these accounts down en masse. But they seem to be shifting strategy because obviously this is working. American politics is more divided now than it ever has been. And it seems to be directly because, and pretty well correlated with when this whole campaign started back in 2014. I mean, I know things kind of started to escalate before then, but really they hit critical mass when Russia started pouring gasoline on the open fire. Speaking about how their strategy seems to have changed for 2020, John Holtquist, Director of Intelligence Analysis at FireEye Inc., says, "Instead of creating content for themselves, we see them amplifying content. Then it's not necessarily inauthentic, but it creates an opportunity for them to hide behind someone else." So essentially they're waiting for us to say divisive things to each other, and then they're amplifying that division. Even if it wasn't some, because they've gotten really good at making things go viral. And it's really easy to do that when you have a botnet operating as like digital spies within these huge platforms. So that was a lot. My brain hurts from covering all of that, and I just want I think I share the feeling that a lot of you probably do. Like at this point, I just want to be able to like know what's real. And that is the scary fucking horrible thing about this, is that it gets us to a point where we begin to no longer know what is real. I mean, how many of the things that I just described in there did you find yourself thinking, man, America's really going crazy about this stuff? And then you realize, well, maybe it wasn't really America. I mean, maybe we were the spark, but again, I feel like a lot of these divisions wouldn't be nearly as heated as they are if it wasn't for a foreign entity pouring gasoline on the fire. Man. Alright. So, with that being the end of the video, I really just want to stop talking. But, as a YouTuber, I know that what I should do now, if you've stuck around to this part of the video, then I should ask you to like this video. Because, boy, if you could listen to that, I hope you liked it. Or you're just really, really bored. If you want more content like this, you want more deep dives into what is important in the news and what kind of false debates we seem to be having, if you want someone who is willing to do some legwork and try to figure out what is just us being trolled and what is real division, and if you want tools to help you win some stupid debates that I've seen, hit that subscribe button. And also, if you want to give me a little less pressure with all these things, I would greatly appreciate if you went to my Patreon page and left just $1. Just $1 will do it. Just anything that would help me be able to focus more on this instead of the capitalist system that I am being coerced by. So, with that being said, I hope you learned something today. And also, if you want any of the links to what I was talking about in here, I have a pretty comprehensive set of sources down there in the description. Feel free to check them out, read more. A couple of things that I didn't cover as much because, I mean, frankly, this video is going to run long regardless. A couple of things that you could look into for yourself is Russian influence into the 2018 election, and Russian influence moving forward into the 2020 election, because there isn't as much dynamic evidence like I had for a lot of these other things for those, but they are still important to know about. They aren't very exciting to read out loud. So, check those things out, stay aware, stay informed.